Hello and welcome to another episode of the Table 7 podcast. Again, I am alone. God, I'm so lonely. But it's fine. We can get by. COVID restrictions and all that makes it very hard to plan, so on and so forth. So, today we're going to be talking about the England team, which in the past few hours was released by Mr. Southgate himself. I'm going to make some predictions, as per, namely on the Euros and the weekend's fixtures in the Premier League. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Jamaican football. It's made a few headlines recently, and we'll dive into as to why it's made a few headlines a bit later on. So, chill, relax, don't worry. Everything said is my own opinion. Have a drink, chill, and listen to the Table 7 podcast yet again. So, first of all, we're going to be talking about the England team. Now, I know I have at least one Welsh listener. So, I might cover Wales if all goes well. Dean Henderson in goal with Sam Johnston and Nick Pope. I think 3 solid goalkeepers. Other than Sam Johnston, kind of conceded the most goals in the league this season, but that's fine. They can skip past that. The defenders are Ben Chilwell, Connor Cody, Eric Dyer, Reece James, Harry Maguire, Tyrone Mings, Luke Shaw, not bad. John Stones, Kieran Trippier, and Kyle Walker. Midfielders are Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, Jesse Lingard, good shout. Mason Mount, Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice, and James Ward-Prowse. And the forwards are Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Raheem Sterling, and the mighty Ollie Watkins. Now, that team, I'd say, is about 70% good. Obviously, I've mentioned my questioning of Sam Johnston, but, you know, when you concede the most goals in the highest league and you still get chosen to play for England, you shouldn't really be up there. A bit of an odd choice, Mr. Southgate. Change your mind. The defenders, I think, are quite solid, to be fair. Particularly Luke Shaw. He's been in great form for United. Tyrone Mings, another good addition, I think. I haven't seen too much of Kieran Trippier. Pardon. But I don't really watch an awful lot of La Liga. The midfielders, Jude Bellingham to me is a bit of a surprise entry. He had a couple of good games in the Champions League, but ultimately, I said on the podcast a couple of weeks ago with Ben, we hadn't really heard too much from Jude Bellingham. He has a couple of good games in the Champions League, and suddenly he's in the England team. Jesse Lingard, very good addition, very good. Calvin Phillips, best of a bad bunch, if you ask me, from Leeds. Could have made a probably better decision. Declan Rice, again, any West Ham players in good form at the moment. I think we can all agree on that being true. James Ward-Prowse, obviously scoring bangers for Southampton from the free kick. trait that he has, and yeah, I mean, Phil Foden's obviously the best player in that midfield that has been chosen, but the fact that he's been labelled as a midfielder means that he's not going to be playing on the wing like he does for Man City. I was about to say United there. Backlash. The forwards: Calvert-Lewin, Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Saka, Raheem Sterling, and Watkins. Personally, I don't think it's a surprise that we're seeing Ollie Watkins in the England team. I watched him at Brentford. Cracking player. Aston Villa, he's had a pretty good first season in the Premier League. Definitely deserves to be in the England team, if you ask me. Not tainted by bias. I'd like to point out, not tainted by bias. Harry Kane, his last few games have been incredible, to say the least. And I think it's, he has to be one of the first names down on the sheet, really, doesn't he? I think that's the one thing that he's got right, Mr. Southgate. But yeah, all in all, a decent team. It's not world beaters. I don't think they could go up to France, Belgium, Germany, Brazil, any of them and beat them. But, if the world rankings were a Premier League, they would be the current West Ham of that team, of that league. But yeah. So England play San Marino, Albania, and Poland in the next 3 games over the next couple of weeks. San Marino, I mean, that's a bit of a given, really, isn't it? You might as well wipe that one off the board. Not to be disrespectful to San Marino, but they are a team of literal amateurs. Albania could swing either way. Well, not swing either way in terms of the results. I think England are going to win that one. But I meant in terms of the game. Could be a rout, could be a beating, or it could be a very tight game. Albania have a handful of high-class players playing in Serie A, for example. Poland, though, will be the biggest challenge for England. I think any England fan would agree with that. And I think it's one England could lose out of pure complacency. Quality-wise, England are the better team out of any of those aforementioned teams, but the English have a tendency to be complacent or arrogant towards their opponents, and Poland, if anybody is going to punish them, it's going to be them. I think you can agree on that. The rest of the world can agree on that. If I had to pick my starting 11 for all 3 of those games, I would go Dean Henderson in goal. He's had some good performances recently for Man United. I believe he was in goal against Man City when he kept a clean sheet. Left back, I would personally go with Luke Shaw. Again, good form. And, United they're not closing the gap to Man City, but they seem to be somewhat pacing the rest of the field. 2 centre-halves, John Stones, I think, and Tyrone Mings. I'll have United fans telling me, why not Harry Maguire? He's just too clumsy for me, if you ask me. If I had to choose the right back, I would go with Kyle Walker again because I haven't seen much of La Liga. I'm going to go for 4-3-3, so 3 midfielders, 1 defensive and 2 there. I'm going to put Declan Rice in at that holding position. I think he's had a good season at West Ham. It's only natural that he gets started. And the two of the midfielders, I am going to go with Jesse Lingard and Mason Mount. And a lot of people are going, oh, why not Phil Foden? Oh. It's because I'm going to put him on the wing, okay? Where he's been playing for the majority of the season for Man City. So yeah, Mason Mount and Jesse Lingard in the midfield with a holding midfielder in Declan Rice. My left winger, I'm going to go with Phil Foden. My right winger, I'm going to go with Raheem Sterling, or the other way around, doesn't really matter. And obviously, starting striker has to be Harry Kane, doesn't it? I feel forced into that position, but he's a good player, so I can kind of understand their point when they say that they want him to start every week. But yeah. Now I'm going to be talking about the European Championships in 2020 taking place in 2021. The logic baffles me, but it's the situation we find ourselves in. I'm going to talk about the top 4 teams in Europe. And again, this is my opinion. As in the 4 teams that could make it to the final if things go their way. You can say that for any team, but I mean, like, you get me. I think the 4 teams that have a good chance this year of really making a good impact are England, France, Spain, and Denmark. Now, before you all scream at me saying, "Oh, where's Germany? Ooh," calm down and shush for a moment. I don't think Germany have got the depth or the current talent to go into a tournament and win it. Now, people did write them off at the last World Cup until they beat Brazil 7-1. It's a bit like, it's a bit like saying Man City aren't going to win the league. You would expect Germany to be at least in the semi-final, winning stuff. But I just don't see it this year. They've got a good bunch of players. They've got a manager who's been there for the past 15 years, who's been there and done that, but they've never won a European Championship under Joachim Löw. And they said that he's going to step down at the end of the tournament. And I just don't see Germany making it too far, if I'm honest. They've got good players who are aging. There's not a lot of young German talent coming through at the moment. Like headliners, you think of your headline young acts, you have Mbappe, Haaland, Foden, that kind of thing. And Germany just don't have that at the moment. So I'm not banking on Germany doing too well. Now for England, they have youth and experience in their team. As mentioned previously, they've chosen Bellingham for the next few games. He's young. Contrast that with the experience of Harry Kane. They feed off each other, or they could, theoretically. I think England stand a good chance. I don't support England, but I think they've got a good chance of at least getting to the semi-finals this year. So long as they don't put Sam Johnston in goal. I very much doubt he's going to listen to this, but if he does, I'm sorry, but the season he's had, he doesn't deserve to be in the England team. He's a good goalkeeper, don't get me wrong, but this season, not quite where he should have been for an England call-up. France, I think it's a widely known fact that France are one of the world's best teams. They're second in the world rankings behind Belgium. I don't know how Belgium are there, but they're world champions. They've been there and done that with tournaments. They've made the last two major finals. They lost one to Portugal in their own backyard, but they then won the next one. So you contrast France to England. France have been to more major finals in the past 5 years than England have in the past 55 years. Probably more, actually. No, 55 years. So you can see why there's there's not a lot of confidence for England to win it, but I'm confident that they can do well. I still agree with the notion that Ben made a few weeks ago, where he said that he didn't believe Gareth Southgate was the best manager. I agree with that. Do I think this will be Southgate's last tournament? No. I think after the next World Cup he'll go, but we have to wait and see. So France, they have a whole array of world-class players, maybe not in goal, but you look at their defence, you've got Varane, Umtiti, Pavard, Hernandez, Mendy, a whole load of players. In the midfield, they've got Pogba, Kante. Thinking off the top of my head is not the best thing to do. You could say Rabiot deserves a mention. And I think France's attack is where they're strongest, with people like Mbappe, Griezmann, Ousmane Dembele, even Olivier Giroud. He didn't score a single goal during the World Cup, but I think he was an integral part of that squad. Moving on now to Spain. Now, the reason why I'm putting Spain in this, right, is their players that you would expect to be in that team are slowly picking up form. You look at your Ramos, De Gea is playing a few games for United. Their players at City, so Ferran Torres getting the game time, doing well with that game time. I just think out of the big nations in Europe, Spain is the dark horse. Italy are, in my opinion, not quite good enough just yet. But Spain have that experience and that talent still there. In little fragments, but it's still there. I don't think they could go on and win it, but they could definitely go far. I think, I'm not sure what the tree is like, but I think the final will be England against France at Wembley. Shockingly, but that's how I think it's going to end up. Denmark. Shock for everybody listening to this. The reason why I think Denmark are going to get in is because they have been quietly and consistently working away at the international game. They are they're just hard workers, and they've got some decent quality in that team. You don't need to look past Kasper Schmeichel in goal, having a really good season with Leicester. Kaya, I think that's how you pronounce his name, is always a solid player at the back. Working your way further forward, Dolberg, Christian Erickson. Erickson, I think, will be the player that, if he gets selected, will be the difference for them, obviously. Because he hasn't had an awful lot of luck this season. So he'll be looking to impress, and so will be on his best game, and I think he'll lift the rest of the squad with him. Not a lot of other teams have that in what I think will be their captain. So yeah, you have to look out for Denmark as well, in my opinion. And yeah, England-France final I'm looking for. I think France are going to win it. Slightly biased of me, but it's tainted with reason, not with bias. So yeah, I think France are going to win it this year. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Jamaica. Now, a lot of you will be thinking, why on earth are we talking about Jamaica? Well, let me tell you. They have hit the headlines across various newspapers and football websites recently, talking about the amount of players who would have originally affiliated themselves with England are affiliating themselves with Jamaica. The main story there was with Mikel Antonio saying that he wants to play in the 2022 World Cup, and so chose to play for Jamaica rather than England because he doesn't think he's good enough for England. Now, it's not just him that has switched allegiances. I have a few in front of me. Andre Gray, for example, he hasn't won a single cap for Jamaica up until recently. Was wanting to play for England and doesn't. So he's going to play for Jamaica. Ravel Morrison, he's unattached. Doesn't actually play for anybody at the moment, but he was somebody who wanted to play for England, did at a young level, and he's played a couple of games for Jamaica. But yeah, Ethan Pinnock from Brentford, Liam Moore from Reading, Wes Harding from Rotherham United, Amari Bell from Blackburn, and Curtis Tilt as well from Wigan. Players who've switched their allegiances. Now, that's a championship standard team. Okay, they're all defenders. Players are just listed, plus Andre Gray, who's obviously a championship player. It's going to be a championship level international team. However, they do have a rather good player in Leon Bailey, who plays for Bayer Leverkusen. He has to be their best player. I mean, there's no two ways about it. He's young, he's capped, he's scored a goal, and he plays for a pretty decent German team. So yeah, I think you can't write this team off. They're going to be championship level. They've got some good players switching sides, some informed players switching sides. If Mikel Antonio gets that call up whilst he's still in form, then who knows? But the World Cup is a conversation for a different day. Um, but they're definitely, yeah. I look at that team. I mean, you guys can't see it on the podcast or on the video, but it doesn't look dreadful. They could definitely beat teams like, maybe not Portugal, but some slightly low ranked teams like Scotland or maybe even Wales. Because when you go into something with that championship mentality, it's like it's not sit back, but it's let them know you're there. Brexit football, I think some people would call it. I personally would call it that. But yeah, I mean, who knows what happens? Who knows what will happen? Jamaica becomes suddenly a dark horse um, at the World Cup next year. I don't condone gambling, but maybe it might be worth throwing a pound on them making it out of the group stages if they qualify. They haven't qualified yet, so don't bet just yet. Well, now it's on to the predictions stage, and this weekend it's going to be a little easier as there's only 4 games being played. One on the Friday, one on the Saturday, and 2 on the Sunday. Now, these might be overshadowed slightly by the final weekend of the Six Nations, but this is a football episode, not a rugby episode. So, on the Friday, we start off with Fulham against Liens United. Both teams in okay form. A bit more up for grabs for Fulham than for Leeds. That could be a motivator. Leeds, however, have a player called up to the England squad, which could lift the whole team. But it might not lift Patrick Bamford, actually. He was an omission. I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw a fair few angry Leeds fans saying, "Oh, Patrick Bamford should have been in the team. If he was good enough, he would have been in the team." The only reason why Sam Johnson is in the team for all those Leeds fans who are then going to cry about what I just said is because there's no other good English goalkeepers. Fulham Leeds, I'm going to hazard a guess and say a 1-1 draw for that game. Brighton and Hove Albion against Newcastle United on Saturday. It could be a good game, could also be a bad game. It's a bit of a relegation scrap. Newcastle are in awful form. Steve Bruce is going to get sacked at the end of the season. I am dead certain about it. But I see Brighton winning this. Not by much. I'm going to say 1-0 to Brighton. It's going to be an awful game to watch. But it'll be a good game to watch. If you know what I mean. It's going to be awful, but it will put you on the edge of your seat. It won't be 2 teams pass around the back, put it that way. The first game on Sunday is West Ham against Arsenal. I have West Ham winning this one 2-1. Despite Arsenal's recent successes, I think Arsenal just won't win it or even draw it. I just don't see it happening. Sorry, Arsenal fans. So yeah, 2-1 to West Ham. Aston Villa, Tottenham. This could be a good game. A mid-table clash that will trigger a few people. It's at Villa Park. It's in the evening. Villa didn't play midweek. So I am going to say 2-1 Aston Villa. That's how I think that was going to go down. Tottenham have been on good form, but all good form comes to an end. It's just the way it works. And with Tottenham, it comes to an end a bit more quickly than at other teams. So, sorry, Tottenham fans, but I think Aston Villa is going to win this one 2-1. Sorry if that triggers you just a little bit. That's all for this week on Table 7. I hope you enjoyed. If you do, leave a like and subscribe. Comment if you wish. I'd love to hear your opinions. For those listening on Spotify, follow the podcast. Share it with your friends, with your family, with your football buddies. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been your host, Jack. This has been the Table 7 podcast. And a relatively short episode, I'd say. I think this one didn't make half an hour. But if it does, then all good. So yeah, we'll see you next week. Watch out as well. We have the F1 podcast coming out next week to do a preview. And yeah, look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. See you next week. And goodbye.